Hello and welcome to another day here on the floor at RSAC Conference 2023. So very excited to have you joining us today. This is day 3. We've been going live all week, having conversations with amazing experts on the floor. By the way, my name is Steve Nehart. I'm the Director of Content Marketing here at SANS Institute. And I would love to invite you, if you are joining us right now, go ahead and drop us a comment in the chat. Let us know where you're connecting with us from. Drop a country flag. Tell us a little bit about what you are looking forward to seeing today across our live streams. What else is happening at RSAC? If you're not part of the SANS community, I'd invite you to join or newsletter over at sans.org/join. To kick today off, listen, we're having 7 SANS experts in the booth with us today. You do not want to leave. Don't touch the dial. Don't change to another browser. Just leave your browser open. We are having 7 people in the booth with us over the course of the next 2.5 hours. We're going to be giving away amazing prizes, but you need to be here when those giveaways happen. So to kick today off, I am extremely excited to welcome the amazing Heather Mahalik, SANS Fellow, forensics expert, and a dear friend. Let's give it up.
Thank you.
How you doing, Heather?
Look at that welcome. That was nice. I'm great. How are you?
I am fantastic. Day 3 is off to a great start, and I'm excited to have you in the booth with me.
Thank you.
Are you excited about RSA 2023?
I am. RSA is overwhelming. I won't lie. There's a lot of people here, like we were just saying, but it's always great to see old, find new, learn new things.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about your keynote happening later today. I'm just teasing that out. We'll dig into that a little bit more. But when we were talking earlier, and there's a theme going, about, our path into cyber. I thought it would be great for us to kick things off and talk about how you got started in cyber and what it was that drew you into the field.
I was at a women's panel yesterday at KPMG, and one of the women said, after 5th or 6th grade, that's when girls lose interest in STEM, which I didn't even know anything about STEM when I was in 5th or 6th grade. That was a long time ago. But I was in the right place at the right time in the Air Force and took a risk. But I've walked through my story. I've written blogs on my website, smarterforensics.com, if you want to go on how I got started.
Go Google Heather Mahalik.
Yeah, you can go check it out. But what I think is really important is at SANS, we're trying to find the newer generation. So anytime I see a female or someone new in this career field in a class, I'm trying to make proper introductions. So Julia Gately is a perfect example. She just broke into DFIR within the last few years. So I think hearing from her story versus mine, right place, right time, had to learn what a hard drive was. I had no clue about anything computers. I could use spreadsheets and check my AOL. and are you ready for this? Change my MySpace wallpaper.
Some of the young ones right now are Googling MySpace.
That's what I could do.
The question that has nothing to do with cyber is who was in your top 8?
Yes, I know. It's crazy. But I had fantastic mentors, and that's a message that I will always push along, is find someone that inspires you and let them naturally groom you. Even if they don't think they're mentoring you, people mentor in ways they don't even realize.
I love that about, having seen your work. I mean, you do amazing work within the space. I have to commend you. It's very obvious to me as I watch you navigate that that's a part of your heart to impact and to help others kind of rise up in the field, especially women.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget where they started.
Yeah.
And it's a good gut check for yourself to think you are that new person.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I walk into rooms now, when I came down here on the floor yesterday, I was like, ooh, my introverted side wanted to come out. But I'm like, no, it's my job to talk to people and be open and just have those conversations. It's very important.
So I only came into the cybersecurity space 4 years ago. And I was mentioning this last night. I'd walk the halls of our training events, and I'd almost light up if I saw a woman,
Mhm.
make it, a woman of color. And yet now I'm looking at this floor, I attended a reception last night, seeing, women in cybersecurity. I attended a WESIS reception, and you're seeing so much more women and people of color in the space. Does that excite you? Not
It
being
does,
the
but we
only?
still need more.
We
I
absolutely
was
do.
honestly joking. I was crossing in the crosswalk earlier, and I was on the phone, and I said, wow, in a sea of 100, there was me. Here I am.
So you still
So
feel,
we still need
yeah,
more, but I think people are becoming more confident that they do belong. And I
Yes.
think that's super important, is everyone belongs.
Yeah.
And I think even within diversity of race and gender, we need diversity of age.
Yes.
Because people get stuck in your mindset.
Yeah.
And I heard another talk last week in the UK, and someone said after the age of 30, your brain cannot change. So,
Is that so?
yeah, so if we have different age groups, have people in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s, all genders, all races at the same table. It's so important.
Yeah. So listen, coming back to the how you got started in cyber, I'm going to throw up a poll on the screen. Invite everyone watching right now to hop on over to slido.com. There's a code on the screen. You can type that code in or scan the QR code on your cell phone and share, how you got started in cyber. And we'll look at
I'm the last one. Pure luck.
We'll see what the results look like coming through in a minute. But did you always know that you wanted to work in forensics?
So, yes, but not digital forensics.
Okay.
I wanted to do bloodstain pattern analysis and crime scene investigations.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get a job without being a police officer. I had no interest in doing that. So I needed to find a way, and I was just waiting and patient. And then computer forensics landed in my lap.
Was
So
there
here I
somebody that inspired you, mentored you?
So when I honestly started, no, I thought I was going to use that as a stepping stone. I got my first job and I'll hop into something else that I wanted. But my first boss ever, his name is Sean Howe. He's still in the industry. He believed in me and taught me to validate evidence and understand what I'm doing and made me earn access to the tools. And he was willing to invest in me and train me. We did forensics every Thursday. Like he made it fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you still keep contact with him now?
I do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There was another person I used to work with named Steve, and I could not do public speaking ever. I could do 2 slides and I had to memorize them. No one could ask any questions. And Steve was like, maybe next week you do 3 slides. I'm like, I'm never doing 3 slides. And he saw me speak about 10 years ago, and he's like, I have no idea who you are. He's like, you can hold a cup of coffee and naturally take sips and do all these things that you said you could never do.
Right. So what's the advice to somebody?
Start with 2 slides. Seriously. And there are so many people that I have groomed that are now being SANS instructors that were afraid of public speaking. They were afraid to put themselves out there.
Yeah.
And I always recommend start at a virtual summit, because you can have notes all over your desk. You can have sticky notes behind the camera. No one sees that.
And yeah, I think it's something that it's a muscle, right? You have to continue to exercise it. As much as I do podcasting and video, I encourage people to get involved in Toastmasters, which is an organization to help you work through those ums and ahs and pauses and so on. But yeah, you're amazing at this point. I want to be like Heather when I grow up. So when others ask you how to get started in default or the broader cybersecurity space, what's your advice to them?
So there are a few things. SANS has a fantastic new to cyber program, and I strongly recommend that. There are so many free resources. Specifically, as an author of a SANS course, we record in the on-demand studio. And when we do these recordings, we record 1 free hour of material that's available for every single course. So DEFR alone, you could get 16 hours of training. So even if you're interested, you need to find what interests you. Is it a certain person? Is it a topic? Is it a theme that you kind of want to go with? Because if you have Katie Nichols and I side by side, our interests are vastly different, but we work really well together. So her track is obviously different than my track. So that's what I recommend, is finding someone who speaks to your soul, that motivates you. Because if you can keep following that person, introduce yourself, start following them on social media, network, but start with the free stuff. Figure out what you want to do before you fully the invest.
Yeah. You touched on some of the things with new to cyber. Are there any other key resources that SANS creates that we should probably be tapping into?
Yeah, so obviously the new to cyber, all of the course demos, the posters, the tools, the live streams, there are white papers, webcasts. If you're specifically interested in DFIR, you should go to the DFIR Summit, and that is live and in person in Austin, Texas. So live online, in person. I think it's one of the best events of the year. Clearly, I am biased, but it's all new talks. It's people in the community. You're not going to get vendor sales pitches. It's a fantastic way to find people. Jason Jordaan, for example, he was found at a summit. And now look what he's doing for SANS.
Absolutely. Somebody we're talking with in about an hour. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that
Same
conversation.
Thing with Megan Roddie. You know, Megan's first talk was keynoting DFIR Summit last year.
I did not know that.
It's wild.
So
brilliant.
DFIR Summit, I started working for SANS in 2019, and it was the first summit event attended, and just blew my mind. And watching you guys, as much as other people attending looked at you as the rock stars of the space, I just remember seeing how humble and engaging you and Rob and Phil were, and it was just a delight. It was.
Thank you. We love it. We sure do love it.
We need a pan to Rob Lee doing a moonwalk across the floor. But if you could go back and do anything different in your journey in cyber, question is, would you?
I would. And I caught some flack on this one. There's an article written about me recently. It's like, what's some advice you would give to someone? And my dad is old school. Yeah. So he's very much like, when you get a job, you stay with that job. Like, this is who you retire with. And I wish I didn't take that advice. I wish I job hopped a little bit more, that not so much because that looks bad on your resume, but move to different cities, experience different cultures, different workplace environments, versus when I was 29 years old, I feel like I landed hard where I still kind of am. And it's great. It's been a great career. But from 22 to 29, I would have loved to live in New York City. Yeah. I had an opportunity in London, and I didn't take it because I was afraid. So take the opportunities.
100%.
You can always go back.
And as you said, it looks bad on the resume, like maybe in the immediate, but years down the road, it won't show.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I look at resumes. If I see someone that every year leaves, people won't want to hire you because they want to invest in your training. They don't want to do things like that. But if it's like 2 years and you have a reason, you outgrew that team, 100%. Or there was a different opportunity, then it can make sense. So you just have to make sense of your job hopping and not be chaos. Yeah. You don't want to be Frogger, but you want to get to that other side of good things.
So we talk about getting into cyber. You're in cyber. You're a curriculum lead with SANS. You're a course author. You're an amazing speaker, as we touched on, delivering an amazing keynote today. I'm claiming it in advance. But we touched on this just before we started talking. You're also a mom.
Yeah.
How do you balance, all of this?
It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm not going to lie. I've been on the road the last 5.5 weeks. I still have made it to some soccer games and baseball games, so I try my best there. But I try to balance as much as possible and try to do better at saying yes to the things that are truly going to make a difference. Yeah. So Kate Marshall said to me once, if the answer is not heck yes, then it should be no. So can I find someone else to fill that yes? Yeah. But unfortunately for my kids, the last few weeks have been a big heck yes. But I think that's really good to think about it.
Yeah, that's a gem right there. So once again, I'm going to highlight, you're delivering a keynote today with 4 other amazing people, the 5 most dangerous new attack techniques. That's going to happen for those of you here at the show at RSAC Conference 2023. That's going to happen in Moscone West, Level 1 at 3:55 p.m. Pacific today. If you're not here, I believe you can watch that on our live stream, not this one, but through the show. You'll be able to access that. can you, I know you can't tell us about what the body of that is, but tell us from a high level if the threat landscape is being impacted by the new generative AI tools like a chat GPT.
Okay, so without giving anything away, two of us are going to be discussing that from really opposite perspectives.
Love it.
Something that I have done the last few years is try to make everyone in the audience realize they're attackable. So I try to do personalized, everyday human attacks.
Yeah.
Because not all of us are going to have some giant breach happen to us, thank goodness. But
Yeah.
as a clue, I decided to try to use AI to phish my 9-year-old.
Really?
Yes. So
Tell me more.
We're going to learn some securing the family as well. But I have clearly secured him really well. He would not give in. And something that I don't know that I'll have time to say, but his biggest thing was I prepped him saying, hey, this is mom. It's going to be me trying to talk to you as this fake person. And he understood that, but he's like, how are you doing this? And I told him chat GPT, and he said, isn't that a robot? And I was like, well, kind of. And he's like, what if the robot gets hacked? I'm not telling you anything.
Wow.
So I'm like, he's 9. And his mind is like, I'm not telling you anything because that robot's going to store that information. I know what you do. So it's kind of,
that's pretty
that's
cool.
something I have to do
like
next.
That, yeah.
Stay tuned for that webinar.
Yeah, I'm interested as the parent of a almost 9-year-old.
But it can be used for good. And that's one of the big messages is where people get so excited and then also fear what's new. We have to learn how to leverage it and to our benefits. Because all good things can be used for bad.
Yeah, 100%. Heather, I am so excited for you, and I'm going to be in attendance today for your keynote. Anything else you want to share before we wrap?
Say hi. Say hi not only to me, say hi to everyone. If you're here in person, meet someone new, make a new contact.
100%.
Spread the good word of deeper.
Beyond your talk, is there anything else you're excited about seeing while you're here?
Well, I was really excited. I rarely get to attend talks. Mattia is doing an Apple Lab coming up here at 1:15. I'm very excited for that one. But I was able just to watch Wendy, Leslie, and Katie do a panel on incidents. And it's so nice just to see people that I respect in this community being honored on a stage and everyone listening. It's so great.
Love it. Love it. Heather Mahalik, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Listen, we are going to go ahead and tee up the first of our giveaways for today. We're going to put a slide up on the screen here in a second. But to enter, first off, let me tell you what you're going to win. We're going to give away a gift card for $40 to our sansgear.com store. Do me a favor, if you're interested, go ahead and type hashtag SANS livestream in the chat right now to be entered. And stay tuned. We're going to take a small break. And when we get back, I'm going to do a drawing and give away a prize with the amazing Mr. Rob T. Lee. So hang tight. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. Am I done with this?
These are the people that I look to, and so many of us look to give us insights on what to expect next, what we should focus on in keeping cyberspace secure.
Like Ed said, when we know something, we want to share it with you. So that's what we're here to do. I'm going to talk to you about 2 different new attack techniques that I think everyone needs to be paying attention to. Let's dive right in here.
The first attack, and it's really difficult to figure out which attacks are the most compelling or the most dangerous. But I've been tracking them very closely, as I always do.
What excites me always about security is how things change. And we are doing these panels now in one form or another for about the last 10 years. Now each year there's something new, something exciting really here to talk about.
Hello and welcome back to our RSA Conference 2023. We're broadcasting live here all week long. We just finished an amazing conversation with Heather Mahalik, and I'm so excited to be joined by Roddie. Welcome, my brother. How you doing?
Hi, how are you? I didn't realize we're live. Right?
We are live.
There are people watching us right now.
There are people watching us across YouTube,
Three people. How many people?
LinkedIn, Twitter, quite a number. I have no idea.
There's a lot of people.
There are a lot of people.
Right.
And there are a lot of people that will be dropping comments from all over the globe. Do me a favor, if you're not part of our SANS community, hop over to sans.org/join or scan the QR code on the screen right now and make sure you're part of all that's happening at SANS Institute. Listen, Roddie, if you don't know yet, you should. He's the Chief Curriculum Director and Faculty Lead here at SANS Institute. Somebody I value tremendously in my own journey at SANS and feel like, has helped to position me for where I sit right now. And I also consider him a dear friend, whether he does or not. But I know he does.
Definitely.
But Rob, as you're here at RSA Conference 2023, right? Like, what's been your takeaway so far?
It's just the sheer amount of people, camaraderie, love of this business that we're in, trying to make a difference. It's all about the people. It's like, coming out of COVID and, seeing the conference last year, it really felt like we were coming back. But this year, this feels just jam-packed full of people, activities, conversations that are extremely exciting. It's been a ton of fun so far, and I'm really, really happy to be here.
Absolutely is. I just spoke with Heather a bit about this, but I've got to pick your brain. We've had a lot of conversations over the last few months, you and I especially, about AI and chat GPT, but and I know this is a topic near and dear to you. What are your thoughts about AI's impact right now on cybersecurity?
Well, first of all, I'm personally nerding out on it in a lot of different ways. I find AI fascinating. First of all, I'll start in saying that SANS is doing a summit on AI.
Yes.
It's about cybersecurity impacts. And real questions that we're trying to ask is, going back to it, because I don't think anyone is an expert in this, first of all. Everyone is looking at this from the side and saying, what is the impact? So if you're a CISO and trying to figure out what are the questions I need to be asking as an organization when I have different teams inside the organization saying, I would like to use AI in my day-to-day work. What are the implications for privacy? What are the security implications? Who controls the data? What policies do I need to establish for use between the different teams in the organization? What if someone accidentally uploads a financial spreadsheet that is, not supposed to be shared, or PII data to these engines and text models that are out there?
Yeah.
All of these things are widely important to CISOs right now, that they're being asked these questions and no one has the answer. So we're looking at this and trying to bring a group of experts together who are focused on the cybersecurity implications of AI. But just from a perspective, and Heather and I have had this conversation as well about, what are, the first thing we're going to start seeing people use AI for, especially in the criminal world and, the security world, is a lot of the, being able to generate content that is a near replication of the target that you potentially want. So if you want to generate an email, if you want it to look like it's written by someone from a certain political mindset,
right?
And you don't know what their mindset is or the type of language they use, you'd probably say, I would like to write this email with this political, maybe, one way or another, it doesn't really matter, with this mindset under this thing, and also include this link.
Wow.
And all of a sudden you could generate a spear phishing email pretty rapidly because of this stuff. So these are some of the things that you could, potentially do. I've had conversations in general, and there's a joke on South Park. I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, but the kids are talking about, it's like, man, you are doing really good dating right now. How are you able to do this? And he said, well, whatever my girlfriend writes me, I will just take that question or write what she says. I'll put it in ChatGPT and say, what am I supposed to say as a response to this? Now, this is on South Park, and then it'll put it back in the text and saying, here's exactly what you should say in response. And again, it's like this perfectly, crafted text response. Now, I've done this even with my kids. They'll text me, and kids have a lot of emojis, and they have misspelling, and so I took their text message. I said, look at the style of this text message.
No way.
Respond to it as an 11-year-old in a similar style, in a snarky way back to this individual. And it pulled out emojis.
Oh my
it
gosh.
pulled out the text. It had the same language, things that, terms you and I would not be familiar with. And I sent it back to my kids, and they're like, who are you? You're not my father. It's like, they do. But, if you're taking this one step further, what if you're a child predator and you want to use this stuff in, I'm going to target someone and I want to lure them in. This is the kind of stuff you're like, wait a minute, that can be done now without much thought. And that's the kind of stuff that, I'm trying to highlight this, some of the concerns of parents. There's a huge beneficial side to AI from day-to-day work perspective. But then there's also this, wow, that is going to be able to rapidly move things forward when it comes to what cyber criminals and those using this technology will be able to do. Yeah. So since we're SANS and we're talking about security and cybersecurity in general, we have to kind of talk about all these things, highlight them almost as a problem, even though we're still trying to figure out what is the solution here? What is the policy? Yeah. What should law enforcement do? Should Europe ban it? These are things everyone's asking right now.
So these are all things we hope to have dialogue around at the AI Summit. Tell me one more time. Do you recall the exact dates?
Yes, the summit is on May 31st. The registration is online at SANS right now. If you just do AI Cybersecurity Summit SANS in Google, you'll probably go to the page and you can register now. I think we almost have 4,000, 5,000 people registered for it. And we don't even have a published agenda. One of the things I'm doing here at RSA is I'm going around and seeing who's actually knowledgeable about this area and talking to them and saying, hey, you should submit for the summit. In fact, there's a sign in front of our booth there. I think it also talks about it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So last year you stepped in as a panelist for our annual keynote on the most dangerous attack techniques. This year, keynote's actually happening later today.
Yeah.
If you're watching this live, keynote's happening this afternoon at 3:55 p.m. Pacific in Moscone West, level 1. Make sure if you're here at the show, come out to that keynote. If not, the show is live streaming that keynote. You definitely do not want to miss that. But Rob, what are you expecting to see come out of that presentation? And do you think the attack techniques will look a lot different than last year?
Well, that's a great question. The answer is, and I help nudge the team here a little bit. I said, listen, there's a lot of questions around AI. And I said, put your hats on. At least some of the talks should focus in on the art of the possible. It's like, what are the AI implications when it comes to vulnerability research, to spear phishing? And so there's a lot of folks on the offensive side that said, okay, where could this be? If you had full access to all this, all the GPUs out there, you need to potentially start doing some of this stuff even private. So it's not even public what you're doing. Vulnerability research, exploit development, code development, creating fake businesses, websites that look, near identical to the ones that you're copying to give them your username and password. All these things are definitely possibilities. On the defensive side, the same thing. How can we use this for analytics? How do we potentially look at people in the security operations center and saying something that takes 4 hours of correlation to do, could we potentially create a AI information, pulling that information in, doing the correlation, be able to do much more rapid detection of events as a result of that. So these are some of the topics that I'm nudging the teams like think about, but come in there, do the mic drop, come in and push that line. And in addition to that, we have Ed and Dr. Johannes, Ulrich, who's going to be talking, and Katie Nichols. All of them always are updating their stuff. And one of the presentations I saw even yesterday was it's the same techniques, but it's even more just living off the land and just using what's existing there in a scrappy fight. But all you have to do is get initial access, and that's where something like AI and the automatic creation of emails just makes it almost too easy in some cases.
Wow. So I'm going to shift gears in a second. For those of you who were tuned in while we were talking with Heather, we're going to be doing a giveaway in a few short minutes. I'm going to encourage you to go ahead right now drop hashtag SANS livestream in the chat. That's hashtag SANS livestream in the chat to be entered for a $40 gift card to our sansgear.com store. Listen,
Wait, what?
yeah, we're giving away some merch.
We're giving away some merch?
Giving away some SANS
I'm
merch.
giving away some merch.
Yeah.
That's an inside joke. I'm the one who put up sansgear.com initially. I'm apparently the one still with the credit card on the back end of that site, aren't I?
I don't know, Rob. Maybe you can use ChatGPT to get your way out of that.
Generate credit card number every place.
So I love this LinkedIn comment, using AI to defend against AI. So shifting gears, you've always even listening to you right now, you've always seemed to have a finger on the pulse of kind of where things are moving, right? And what's happening in the industry. What else beyond AI is dominating your attention, right now? What's top of mind in cyber for you?
So I'm going to make this ultra personal right now.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at my I built neural twins, and boy and girl, Connor and Eliana, amazing kids, and they're starting to ask questions like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And as a parent, you're looking, it's like, I have 7 more years, until they go to college. So the question I have now is that, when you're looking at education, and especially when, what is the job someone's going to have, is the 4-year university.
That's where I was going before you even said it. I'm like, do they go to college?
Do they go to college? Or, very similar to the military, you go out and learn a trade, a craft. Is this something, that, especially in cybersecurity, that there's a lot of folks that are out there that, and I'm not saying 4-year degrees are not worth it. They're 100% worth it across the board. But when you're looking at the investment of time and getting someone out the door and saying, could you potentially train someone who is knowledgeable and has the knack for thinking with technology and cybersecurity? This is why a lot of the high school programs exist that we work with the SANS, US Cyber Start, the National Cyber Challenge. All of these things kind of groom these kids. But one of those kids asked me the question, what if I just took 5 or 6 SANS courses, got a certificate, would I be able to then apply for my entry-level job? The answer is yes. A lot of those in human resources right now are not even looking at degree programs. They're looking at certifications and skill set and capability and capacity to learn. If you have that mix, and you already have provable skills through certification, it is in many cases more valuable to these organizations trying to get those entry-level positions, which are incredibly hard to fill.
Right.
With someone who's saying, hey, listen, I'll take that 60, 70K entry-level job just with 4 or 5 certifications, no undergrad degree, get that first job. Where do you think they're going to be in 2 to 3 years? They continue
mid-level,
getting mid-level. They'll be a mid-level engineer by the age of 22, and we all know what they make because we have a hard time keeping them because everyone's stealing them from all of our organizations. So as a result of that, how do you get more into the funnel?
Right.
And that's a question I'm saying. How would you bootstrap someone at that age to say you should consider a career in cyber? The one thing that I've seen, I've actually talked to a lot of kids in high school. They're not even aware that this is a career that they could pursue. There's not enough mentorship out there. There's not enough, what do you do as an information security engineer?
Right.
What does an analyst actually do? It sounds like you have to have this massive computer science degree, but no, it's actually problem solving skills and the ability to keep up with the technology as it changes. And if you have those 2 things, you're going to be on the right track. Because if you have not re-educated yourself, even in 20 years of doing this work, you are already, your skill set is antiquated and it's behind it.
Yeah.
That is how fast the industry is moving right now.
As you said that, I almost envisioned, you talked earlier about leveraging ChatGPT to write the language to respond to. And immediately my head is like, could AI solve the language barrier, right? As a podcaster, I have a vision for my content serving a college-age kid.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a mid-40s adult, right? Like that, I don't speak their language.
Yeah.
And so they don't consume my content. But what could AI do to help bridge that gap?
Well, and again, this is
in the messaging.
We're having the same conversation inside SANS in our own courseware. How does AI help us connect in that language? Say we engulf a course into a language model, and a student would be able to use a chatbot to be able to, 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 will figure out what the question's being asked,
Right.
and then spit
Now
back
to
the
spit
answer,
it, yeah.
potentially translated if you want it, but at least it find the right answer in the text. The same thing would be on your YouTube videos. Hey, I'm trying to look for this. You already have it transcribed. You are pulling all that into even a simple chatbot and saying,
Yeah.
I'm looking for this. Here are the 3 videos you now need to watch. This topic is covered. You don't, or and it'll go to the exact timestamp. Then you can say press play, and it'll boot right there. And
Yeah.
here's where you immediately talk about this. No more having to figure it out of trying to get to the right position or go to this timestamp and then press play. These are small things when we start talking about this. What if we take a video and you have an example that's talked about that in video that is 2 to 3 years old? What if you have the AI in the back end will then change the example to something that happened last week based off of I want to change my example that we're talking about because ransomware doesn't really change. Just who got attacked last week? How much did they pay? That could honestly be updated information.
Yeah.
The latest attack shows while you're watching the video.
That'd be impressive.
That's the kind of stuff that would be able to have content update itself with AI, helping pull in the more recent relevant content and applying it on top of the layer that we're already presenting. So there's a lot of potentials that are out there, and we haven't even really geeked out about this. And we need to have a couple breaks, maybe.
Feel it coming.
What can we do?
So listen,
So many things.
I want to actually ask another question, but I'm going to throw up a poll real quick. I'd love to get everyone watching online to engage with this poll. To do so, simply hop over to slido.com and type in that code or scan the QR code. Question is, what cybersecurity topics are top of mind for you right now? Rob talked a little bit about where his headspace is. We'd love to get your input.
When you talk about my headspace, and I'm sorry, everyone, that's a large headspace.
There's a large headspace there. You can keep talking about that for a couple more minutes.
No, we can't.
Yeah, we have time. We have time. What else is circulating in that mind of yours?
Well, this is where I'm really interested in seeing what folks in the industry also are concerned about. Obviously, I do think from where's the industry going? You walk around RSA in particular, every time I go through here, you have what are the vendors currently chasing? It's like, the buzz we're chasing. And this year it feels a little bit different because it's almost like there's not a new number. AI is, but it's not, no one has solutions for it yet. No one has, we're talking about it, but there's really nothing that is substantially changed. Cloud is still big. We have a lot of folks out there dealing with the software as a service and how to protect the data in it. Organizations, small, medium-sized businesses, and how to protect themselves. Cyber insurance is top of mind for a lot of CISOs right now. And these are not technology solutions. They are risk aversion solutions to be able to say, what should I invest in? People, a vendor of clients, or should I just say, go insurance and I'll just have them pay for it when I get hacked? If you're a CISO, if you're an organization, or you're potentially trying to answer a lot of these questions, and I'm trying to everyone, it's like, oh, that's what I know I should put in. I'm a little worried. It's because I'm interested in seeing what they have to say. But this is some of the things that you start seeing a lot of people have debates about. Is should I just insure and just say not do the investment and have to manage a team? Or now we have Google out there and Microsoft says, we have your security team already embedded in our cloud solution.
Right.
So if you do get compromised, we'll come in and do the response for you. I mean, these are some of the things that, as an industry, you're kind of watching from the side and seeing where is it really going to go. So
we had a couple of responses coming through. Malware, international AI, zero trust, OT models.
Yep.
So story time. Many of you know you as the godfather of default. Tell us a little bit about that nickname and where that came from.
That's a great question. This is not a name that I chose for myself. Every time you even say it, I'm like, yeah, it's just I like getting on stage. It's nothing to do about ego. It's actually like being impactful to individuals. I like teaching. I like the difference that we make with SANS. But I just happened to be in the industry at a time where digital forensics was coming into its own. Mm-hmm. And with having me write a course and teach so many individuals that are out there, that people were just taking digital forensics as like, oh, I'm kind of interested in this. And then they took the class and said, I'm doing this. Mm. And then, behind the scenes, like people come up to me here and said, you don't remember me 10, 12 years ago. but I started this as my career because I took your class.
Wow.
And it's not just my class, it's Chet Silberry, it's all the instructors who have like helped build this class and make it what it is over the years. I think that's where, when they say, where's the root of this? Who's the cause? And that's where people in the industry said, well, it's Rob. And then that's where someone said, well, and I know who it was. It was at one of the summits. It was actually my namesake, Robert M. Lee from Dragos. He said, Rob Lee is the godfather of forensics. And then everyone's like, that. And it stuck. And I still kind of, I shudder a little bit. You never hear me say I'm the godfather of forensics.
I like it.
And
I like it. We just took that clip out.
I'm glad to have made impact, and that's why I do what I do. And I love being a part of this organization at SANS.
Absolutely. I share the same with you. I appreciate you being here, man, sharing some time with me. I want to let everyone know, we just started a brand new live broadcast that's happening every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. See, my time zones are all kind of wacky right now. But we started a brand new show here at SANS called Wait Just an Infosec. Happens every Tuesday morning. And Rob is going to be our guest host next Tuesday.
May 2nd.
May 2nd. So the card is up.
10 a.m. Eastern.
Yes. We're talking pushing cybersecurity forward with Wendy Whitmore. We're also going to have some information coming over from Ismael Valenzuela about combating supply chain attacks. Be sure to set your calendar, block that time, block that hour at 10 a.m. Eastern next Tuesday, May 2nd. If you're enjoying all that Rob shared in the last 20 minutes, definitely don't want to miss this spot. Thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Stay tuned. In a couple minutes, we're going to do another quick giveaway. #SANS livestream.
Wait Just an Infosec, the weekly hour-long cybersecurity-focused broadcast produced by SANS Institute. Join us live on LinkedIn and YouTube every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern, or listen to us in podcast format on Wednesdays. Each week, we'll bring you a rotating lineup of SANS faculty members and experts from all domains of information security, including some of the brightest minds in cybersecurity with decades of experience as practitioners. Our hosts for the first few episodes include Rob Lee, the godfather of DFIR, Dave Holzer, machine learning and AI aficionado, Dean Parsons, ICS security expert, Frank Kim, a leader in cloud security and cybersecurity leadership, Megan Roddie, a specialist in enterprise cloud forensics and incident response, Dr. Johannes Ulrich, threat researcher and application security maestro, and myself, John Hubbard, from the Cyber Defense Curriculum and the Blueprint Podcast. Each week, you'll get to engage with all of these stars and many other industry luminaries in real time as they offer their unique insight and perspective on the world of information security. Featuring guests from across the SANS InfoSec community, we'll dive deep into thought-provoking and rich content for a full range of information security topics, spanning cloud security, cybersecurity leadership, digital forensics, offensive operations, and more. You'll get to explore the implications of groundbreaking and buzzworthy technology like generative AI, and we'll offer up some fresh perspectives on tried and true defense tactics. Our experts will offer new insight that can keep you engaged in the industry, feed your fire for knowledge, and amplify the value you bring to your organization in your cybersecurity career. But Wait Just an Infosec is not just another content feed. It's your opportunity to take your cyber content consumption from passive to active. Engage with professionals in real time, get answers to questions you have directly from the source, and lend your insight by participating in our weekly polls. Take something away from each episode and apply it immediately in the field. When you join the SANS community and tune into Wait Just an Infosec, you're not just signing up for another mailing list. You are uniting with fellow InfoSec practitioners and connecting with certified experts that can help you take your knowledge to new heights. So tune in every week for Wait Just an Infosec, your source for unparalleled access to top experts who are motivated to offer up new insight that can help you take your cybersecurity career to the next level.
So welcome everybody. My name is Chris Elgee. I'm a SANS instructor and a penetration tester for Counter Hack Challenges, and I have with me here today my best friend Sean Atkinson.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Great to be here with you. Appreciate it, my friend.
And just so you know who this guy is, he's actually the CISO for the Center for Internet Security. So if you think of the organizations that develop standards for us, that help secure elections and all those wonderful tasks, like he's the guy who defends that organization. So CISO of CISOs, if you will.
Wonderful. Appreciate it. It's a lofty title, but from a friend, I'll take it.
Well earned indeed. So we're going to start early with a question here, Paul, and it's what exactly is pen testing? Because that's the focus of our talk tomorrow, is what exactly it is. People have lots of different ideas about what that can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's in some cases people see it as a checkbox, right? It's that compliance element. But personally, for me, it's a definition of organizational risk. Where do I see gaps within my infrastructure, and who do I want to find those gaps and provide recommendations that we can then iterate over time? That's a pen test in my mind.
Right, and I'm hoping the audience here agrees. Like, this should be the gimme, and it looks like, yeah, we're rocking about 100%. Oh no, I'm starting to lose a little bit there.
50-50.
Because, I mean, in my mind too, that's my job, is to come and do whatever I can to demonstrate an organization's risk, and not I can find shells, or I found this weird CVE, but where are you vulnerable? Where can I get in before the back ends?
Exactly right. And what we need to do in that space, though, is collaborate, right? In some cases, it's going through that process to find the gaps. It's not about the CVEs, but when they're found, that's awesome. Let's celebrate that, but understand what we need to then do to fix it, right? We want to see that level of expertise in the environment from our penetration testers. That then allows us to iterate our underlying program. That moves us to a greater level of maturity and in a quicker way. And so, ultimately you'll ask the question, who do I want doing that? The adversary or my best friend? Do you know what I mean? So you've got to get to that level where we can cooperate, integrate, and really then start to motivate each other to be better, right? Because that's one of the things we do is, what do I tell you every year? I say next year it's going to be harder, right? That's the goal, right? And we'll add a touch of gamification to it. And, when did you detect me? I need to know, here's all the things we're doing. Here's how we caught you. And then when we don't catch you, nice, you can bring that back. We share. Yeah. And that's what makes it fun in a lot of cases, right?
It is, yeah. And I say this sometimes, I love and hate working with organizations like yours, because I like one major source of burnout for pen testing, no kidding, is when you come back to the same organization year after year and you find the same issues that aren't getting resolved, and you get stuck in this mindset of, why am I doing this? But at the same time, when they do take those recommendations every year and it gets harder and harder, then I've got to up my game, which is great, but love and hate.
Ultimately, that's the expectation, though, right? It is, we can't do the same thing over and over and not learn from it. If we're not learning anything from it, there's no point doing it. That's your checkbox approach, right? We've got to move away from that. We've got to look and define risk so that we can approach it together. And that's the most important part. It's a partnership. It's, you're paying for these services and you want to have, obviously, the best result from them. If you're not going to do anything with the recommendations, to your point, what's the point? And then you come back and it's like, well, there's not even a challenge here. You need to up your skills in order to keep up, and we need to up our skills to keep up with you. That's the whole point. And that, I think, makes us better as organizations. But representatively, we need to get everybody in the same mindset so that we can then start moving this agenda of security from being this defender's dilemma to really a shared partnership, to where we can then move into an approach that is, in a lot of cases, shared. I would say this. So as we move through organizational risk, it puts us in a position where we can then aggregate together those successes, those where we're not reached, really are owned in a lot of cases. Because without your help, we're not better. And then ultimately, as we get better, I think that looks good on you guys too, right?
Absolutely.
That's where we see, look, here's an organization that's done what we've said. Here's our recommendations. Here's our improvement.
You might say we're stronger together.
I wonder if that's a moniker here at the RSAC Conference. Do you think that's a tagline?
I think they might have poached a little bit from our talk.
Maybe. I think that came from us, but yeah, exactly right.
So as we keep going, as we start talking about how to set up a pen test, we have another poll here about exactly how much should be shared. Because as a pen tester, when we're scoping and doing the rules of engagement, we see the gamut. We see the organization who says, I'm going to give you as little as possible. And then we see the organization who says, here's everything. Please find what's there.
Yeah, I mean, here's a thought. Now, there are some engagement that you would start and you want to maybe test the assessment and the capabilities of a representative organization.
Sure.
So start at, kind of the OK Cops perspective.
Yeah, with recon, yeah.
Exactly. Do the recon, what's out there, how can you find us, right? Through the internet, through all of these, the ethereal, as it were. But then as that moves forward, and I would say with the rules of engagement as the exercise, is to then start sharing information. This is what we found. Okay, now here's the network diagram. Here's some targets of opportunity. And I want to assess what can you do. And then we start to share more. Now, in our case, the number of years, the long relationship that we've had, that recon piece is still there, but it's complete sharing, right? There shouldn't be anything necessarily hidden. I'm paying you to find everything. And in a lot of respects, that's what I would like to see really the world take into a perspective, and a lot of CISOs to say, okay, here's what's needed, here's how we improve. We have to do that together, and that's information sharing without question.
Right. And I think I understand the perspective of the organization that's more the zero knowledge pen test, right? I get it that they consider that to be what the adversary begins with. But there are a lot of false assumptions there about that the adversary isn't already in your organization or isn't just looking across the internet for people with your specific vulnerability, right? A lot of that recon stuff just it's not the same with the actual attackers. So.
Exactly right. And I think it's best to put it in the perspective and the mindset, like of an adversary. Absolutely right. That makes a ton of sense. But then ultimately, I want more from you than an adversary, as it were, because you've got necessarily a shortened time frame. They've got, we're looking at statistics, 277 days before they're found. Yep. You guys have got 2 weeks. So let's up your game and give you enough to start assessing our organization and getting us to a point where we've built the security, we're mitigating risk, or we identify risk at least.
So as we think about what the product is that the CISO wants from the pen testers, there are a lot of different opinions on methodology and what that should look like. So it could be a full play-by-play of what the pen tester did through the engagement, or it could just be like a copy-paste block. And I've worked for organizations that do both ways. What do you like to see on a pen test report?
I like to see more of the detailed approach, and I'll give you the reason why. I think the lessons learned from that detailed approach helps influence our internal assessment capability as well as our internal penetration systems. In a lot of cases, we're using that to learn your tactics, techniques, and procedures that you've applied. We need to be doing the same thing internally, right? And having that detailed capability, in a lot of cases, for me, is a playbook. That's what we then should be applying over time, because necessarily I'm learning from the best in the world, and it's sat right next to me. So that's what we need to do.
So, and as pen testers, we might push back because one, it's hard, right? It's a lot to write up, and if there's anything we don't like about our job, it's reporting. To be real honest. And then two is what you touched on there is that it feels like we're giving up part of our secret sauce, but I don't think that's true, right? I don't think us telling you how we did it makes you less likely to bring us back, right?
Absolutely not. I think full disclosure is that's where you start to create the relationship. That's where it is. We can't have the siloed method of, well, I'm going to protect our infrastructure by being the guard and just saying, external recon, if you can't find anything, thank you very much, shake of a hand, that's the pen test. And then respectfully, your own tactics, techniques, and procedures, let's share them, right? Let's understand the approach. Because we're, again, I'll do the grown and stronger together on this piece, but that's what makes this an engagement where your return on investment is the highest, right? I know what's happening. I know where my guys need to be. So is that training? Is that access to systems? Is that the same information I've provided you to give to them as well? And just create a narrative that allows us all to move forward. Let's identify this risk and let's resolve it.
And I'm not sure if we got full results on the methodology question or if we shot that up there. Oh, there we go. So, all right. So in terms of scoping, it seems like there's still a split there. And then let's put the next question too about how thorough the pen test report methodology should be. Which again, it's hard for us, but I think it provides value.
Absolutely does. I mean, if you're in a lot of cases, and again, I get the reporting piece, completely understand, but really, I think that talks to the seasoned veteran in this space as being able to provide a report. But this is another tactic that's very good. So in terms of the executive summary, that's written for, let's say, C-level. But when I get into the technical pieces, that's where we can start to break down and share information, share tactics, techniques. in a lot of cases, Chris, and this may be a little bit unusual, but I also like to make available the internal penetration testers to the external penetration testers as another form of training. This allows cooperation between the teams and also information sharing. Nothing's off the table. We've got to find these issues as quickly as possible because the adversary is out there looking for the same thing. I'd rather it be my best friend than the adversary. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then it looks like here that we've got my eyesight isn't quite as good as my friends here, but we got all right. So the people responding to the poll then agree. They want to see the step by step. And if you don't, you can always skip it, right?
You can. I think the approach though is that exactly right. And I love the fact that we're seeing step by step. It makes a lot more sense, and the granularity and the elements of understanding. Because in some cases, being blue, am I envious of red? Absolutely. Red's the sexy job, right? It's the pen tester and doing all that. Exactly.
We're the jocks. We're the infosec jocks.
Exactly right. And so everybody wants to be the cool kid. What are the cool kids doing, and how can I learn? I don't think there's a better methodology than reflecting your own systems, which you necessarily should understand, but then also seeing how those are bypassed and allowing us to then cooperate through that. The one caveat is, and I'll just bring this up real quick, is you have to have the right partner in that space. In a lot of cases, if you're giving all of the information and then ultimately the pen test comes back and it's basically an executive summary and screenshots of a vulnerability scanner and that's it. That's not a good relationship, but there's contributions back from Blue. I need to see detail. I need to understand what you're doing in the space. If all you're doing is vulnerability scanning, that's not penetration testing. And that's been, maybe that's going back 5-10 years in terms of the old adage, but if that still exists,
I think it does.
That's a huge problem because you're not getting any value. You're not identifying. I could do this work, right? And then I could have the full job and just call myself a pen tester, but I can't because that's not what pen testing is. And so we've reflectively that detailed report just, in some cases, I think it just also shows the capability of the respective team being able to communicate that. Huge, absolutely fantastic.
So our next poll gets to kind of the reverse of that is how much does the CISO share during an engagement, right? Should you let us know when you detected us, when you blocked a thing, or should you just keep silent and just kind of see how we
This is my perspective. And again, I think everybody's going to know where I'm going with this, but it's complete sharing is...
Cat's out of the bag.
Exactly. Cat's out of the bag is we've got to share this information and be collaborative. That's either daily meetings or let's do a stand-up in the morning and we'll do a review in the afternoon, what was found, any issues, concerns. Because really I want to make your experience as clean as possible. Then also when we identify where we've got good protection, right? There's good controls. Okay, let's throw me a white card. I need to move on to the next layer of your defense.
Right.
That's what I do. That's the reason why we need to do that. Is because ultimately we may have strong defenses today. Tomorrow that could be a completely different story.
Sure.
So I need you to go through all of my layers in order to understand where I'm good, where's the gaps, where's my risk, what's the medium.
And at the same time, we as pen testers can't just do the root dance because you let us pass the control, right? Or because you forwarded us an alert. We have to acknowledge that. And if you're a pen tester and you're not putting in positive findings in your report, you're really leaving a big piece out. I think you need to say, hey, we tried this and we failed and you let us pass. And this is a very positive finding, right?
Absolutely. You want to get that feedback, and as quickly as possible. So we, go through sharing those stand-ups. What's the issue? What are we going to do to move forward? Doing that allows us then to either internally reorganize and work with you while you're still here and say, oh, what's a recommendation in this space? What are we missing? Where's the gap? And doing that personally is way better than reading a report 5 to 6 months after and what was the context of this? I have no idea. Let me read the report. If it's not a detailed report, now where are you? I'm going to have to call you up for more hours, right?
So a bit of disagreement here in the crowd. I think some people want to know what was caught. And then some people want to know like as it comes in. So at least no one's at mum's the word. I'm happy with it.
No, I think this is great. I think at the end of each day, absolutely makes sense. But as you start alerting on things, I think that's great too. That to me adds a layer of the gamification, as I mentioned. Oh, you were caught. Oh, you were bypassed. That's awesome. That allows us to build a camaraderie that says, okay, we're moving in the right direction. We're doing this in a collaborative approach. Where then ultimately stronger together through that process. I've said it 3 times now, so I'll go for the top 5.
Yeah, and of course that gives us, when you give us that immediate alert, then that lets us really test defense in depth, right? Because you really want to know, like, missing it all the layers.
Exactly right.
So our last core question is about how much we should share. You know, should we just send you the report when we're done? Should we let you know before we try, you know, the internal blue exploit? You know, how open should we be? How frequently should we check in?
Yeah, ultimately there's a tolerance there, because I think for some of the major pieces, that's an immediate alert that you have a potential exploitable vulnerability in your systems. We've got to work together to get that fixed. That's major right now. And ultimately, what are we doing? We're looking at your experience, and if you say this is an immediate action, here's your critical, okay, that's fair enough. Hands on the table, let's move forward, let's get hands on keyboards, eyes on screen to get this fixed. Ultimately, it really, though, depends on the engagement and where the scope is as well, right? Obviously, it has to be contextualized. But I've always found, you know, working each day as these alerts come up and are found, let's share. And you really start to create a narrative. In some cases, you build that over time in terms of the relationship. And you get to kind of figure out what's the best cadence of discussion and review, but minimum daily, minimum. And then ultimately, if you see an element of vulnerability or exploitability, that's when we have to move forward quicker. But we do it together, right? I mean, that's how we should be doing it, and it just works in everybody's favor. Now, ultimately, it may be, well, I want to use this major issue in order to then bypass extra layers of control.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's do it in a controlled process. Let's follow my tolerance, right? I may not necessarily have the appetite to leave the firewalls on, and everybody's in and out. Data's been exfilled like crazy. All right, then maybe we probably say, okay, hold on, let's get this fixed, and basically make you part of the incident response team and get it moving forward.
Yeah, and I will be honest here too. I've been that pen tester before where there was a new exploit in an edge router device, and the results would either be, from what I've read, it would either give me a shell, it would do nothing, or it would DOS the device. So it would lock up, and I would love to tell you that what I did was I called the client and said, hey, I'm about to try this thing. Is now a good time? I didn't. Young and foolish, first year pen testing, and I fired the thing, nothing happened. I fired the thing again, and suddenly I couldn't connect to the client anymore. So you can guess what the result was. Yeah. So good, but good contact info. Exactly. Called them right up. Hey, you might want to reboot that edge device there. Got it back on. But I think that collaboration is important. I think that the whole
ultimately, and I think even through the rules of engagement would help define some of those elements of what needs prior permission, or what are the tactics, techniques I can utilize in terms of this process. And then that allows us to kind of share that information. Yeah, you're good up until this level. You hit this layer of our infrastructure or this particular subnet, whatever it happens to be. Maybe back up a little bit. That's critical production.
That's OT.
And if you get there, let me know. Let's have a stand up, and we can talk about that. But ultimately, it's I think you get to a level of communication where it becomes comfortable. And when I say comfortable, is you don't mind sharing the tactics that you're using, and we don't mind understanding that you're using them, because we want to test the underlying infrastructure. Ultimately, though, it becomes this, I'll give you the coin toss that I do. So every few years, I don't tell anybody that you're coming in. And then everybody's going, high alert, we're being attacked. I said, okay, let's calm down. But I know what's going on. It's Chris, it's my buddy, he's doing this. And then ultimately, it's... but then I pay for that, right? We should know we have this, but I'm testing incident response at the same time,
right?
And I'm testing in our alert capability. And then if you say no one said anything, and I've got Bloodhound running in this infrastructure, and I've just mapped your entire AD infrastructure, and I've, we'll do a little Cooper roasting at night over the fire, then that's not going to be a good thing. And I think that gets us to a place where it's where we're then comfortable in terms of managing that approach. And again, just better together.
So we got just maybe 2 minutes left. Anything you want to leave the crowd with?
Yeah. No, I think it's. I hope it's opened your eyes, and I think that's the talk tomorrow. Yeah. But it's ultimately this: is information sharing is critical. If we need to get the best and maximize return on the investment of our penetration testing, We've got to share. We've got to be communicating. It's not just a report at the end of the day. It's your playbook for the next year of investment for risk mitigation and really strategizing how you're going to make it harder for my buddy to come back the following year.
I love and hate it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
Awesome.
Sean, thanks so much.
Chris, appreciate it.
Pleasure as always.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Have you guys been having fun today? We've been having so many amazing conversations throughout this morning. Just love everything that Chris Elgee and Sean Atkinson just shared. Make sure you're checking out their talk tomorrow. Listen, you've seen this on the screen for the last minute or two. I've been talking about the giveaway all morning. We're about to do a drawing right now. If you've not yet entered, you have about 30 seconds to do so. Tap hashtag SANS a live stream in the chat right now for your chance to win a $40 gift card to our sansgear.com store. I have 12 entries on my screen, and in about 10 seconds, I'm going to hit this draw button. If you want to enter, do so right now. And I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Are you feeling it, Alyssa? You feeling it? Go for it, Brett. All right, let's see. Let's see who's got some merch coming their way. Grant Daly, you are our winner. Do me a favor, go ahead and connect with us. Shoot me an email right now over at contentmarketing@sans.org. We'll make sure we get your gift card out to you. We'll also try to connect with you over on LinkedIn. So listen, we are getting set here in another minute to have another amazing conversation. Stay tuned for just one more minute. We'll get going. If you've not yet done so, go ahead and join our community right now. You can hop on over to sans.org/join to be sure that you're getting all the latest information about live streams, podcasts, white papers, cheat sheets, all the amazing content that we have and develop here at SANS. That we're making sure you get your hands on that first. So be sure to join our community over at sans.org/join. And without further delay, let's just go ahead and jump into our next segment. So coming to the stage is someone from South Africa.
Yeah,
nice to
be here, Steve.
Jason Jordaan is coming to the stage. He's a SANS principal instructor in our DEFA curriculum. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
That's a great pleasure to be here in San Francisco on this really, really busy, crazy day.
We were just talking about just how incredibly crowded and packed this trade show floor is, right?
Yeah, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. The energy is just, it's a buzz. Everybody is like, all over the place. It's really crazy, but it's really so dynamic as well. There's so much energy here.
So I saw you here yesterday, so you've had a little bit of time, to be able to get around the floor. What's been your vibe so far and the energy that you've gotten?
Well, the vibe is really positive. I mean, what's really impressive for me is the fact that there's so many organizations and vendors here talking about security, having the discussions about security, whether it be service providers, solution providers, educational institutions, but all united amongst a common theme, a common discussion, and that's pretty much making the world a better place at the end of the day.
Yeah, love that. So, we're having this theme of discussion in the booth this week about, how cybersecurity experts got their start in the field. And I'd love to get your insight and input on how you got your foot in the door in cybersecurity.
Yeah, I suppose my journey was an interesting one. I was a child of the 80s, growing up in the microcomputer, home computing sort of era. And when I left school, I had to go do, at that stage in South Africa, to do compulsory national service. And a colleague of mine said, well, why don't you go join the police? Because then you can go and study computer science. And I thought, oh, this is a great idea. I'll get a sort of a study bursary similar to the GI Bill that you would get in the United States. And I thought, wonderful. And the year that I joined the police, they did away with the computer science studies. But I found out I had a real knack for investigations, ended up working as a detective.
Right.
And then because I was the resident nerd in the unit that I worked in, any case that came along that remotely looked like it had to do with computers, I was the guy that got the case. So I literally got into digital forensics right at the beginning when we didn't even call it digital forensics. It was just a bunch of cop nerds finding evidence on computers at the end of the day.
That's pretty neat. So you touched on it. You worked as a detective in South Africa, and you actually ended up establishing the Digital Forensics Laboratory for the South African Police's Special Investigating Unit. What was that like, Jason? Did you enjoy working in that capacity?
So the Special Investigating Unit didn't fall under the South African Police Service. It fell under the Department of Justice, so
Okay.
separate law enforcement agency. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. When I got transferred from the police to the Special Investigating Unit, I had this opportunity to really engage with digital forensics. It gave me an opportunity to really set the groundwork for actually building up what became one of the sort of first formal law enforcement labs in South Africa. And it was an amazing experience, setting up the protocols, setting up the principles, literally building something from the ground up that has really become one of the sort of leading digital forensics law enforcement labs in South Africa.
Wow. Was that hard but rewarding work?
It was very hard, but also very rewarding as well. I mean, it's kind of nice when you take something and you build it with your own two hands, and you literally start from the ground up. But where it was really rewarding was seeing the growth of the people that I actually had working in the lab with me, mentoring these new people, getting into the field and helping them grow. And that sort of engendered my love for teaching and training and things along those lines. It was an amazing experience to see that. And I was very sad to leave it at the end of the day, but I went on to different things, and I think I'm making even more of a difference now than I made back then.
I love, and I'll pause right there. We've now had, this is the third conversation today. For those of you who have been tuned in this morning and heard from Heather and heard from Roddie and listening to Jason, it's a common thread. It's a part of your heart to impact and to mentor and to help the next generation of cyber professionals rise up and take their part.
Yeah, I mean it's very important. When I was a police officer, I learned a lot from senior police officers. So as a young detective, I was partnered up with a more experienced detective, and I learned the ropes through that person. So there's this idea of mentoring the younger generations and the new generations was inculcated in me, and it's something I feel very, very strongly about. I'm getting to that point in my life, I suppose you can say, where you've got to think about the impact that you make and being able to impart knowledge and to help the next generation grow and take the role that you're eventually going to move out of.
Right.
Is really important, because that's how we grow our community, that's how we grow our industry, is by continuing to develop the next generation. And so long as the next generation is better than we are, the generation after them will be better than they are. That's how we make a difference.
True leadership. I love it. So tell me a little bit about your work developing the South African Cybercrime Act. What is it? What does it accomplish? How do you get
So it's kind of an interesting scenario. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would ever be involved in creating national legislation. But I'd been approached by the Deputy Minister of Justice, who was tasked with developing the legislation, to sit on an advisory panel for the development of this legislation. And because of the involvement that I'd had in the forensics community and the law enforcement community in South Africa, I was very involved with discussions around the legal aspects of doing investigations, how we would do digital forensics, how we would integrate it. And one of the sort of unique features of the South African legislation, aside from addressing all the different cybercrime offences out there that you would typically see, for example, in the US with the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, apart from addressing all of those crimes, we actually have a section in the legislation now which requires law enforcement agencies to specifically comply with published standard operating procedures on how to do investigations and how to do digital forensics that actually now carry the weight of law. So people that are now engaged in digital forensics and cybercrime investigations have to meet certain rigid criteria for that evidence to have value in court, and it sets the rules of the game, which I think is a unique situation we haven't seen in any other countries yet. But I think it's important to make sure that digital forensics has a very strong, robust place when it comes to the justice system as a whole.
That's quite interesting. What have you been focusing your attention on this week?
So besides dealing with jet lag, I've been really focusing my attention on getting a feel for some of the newer developments. You know, the going around the different talks and presentations this week has been really enlightening. Be able to see some of the cutting edge research and topics that people are talking about. And I think that for me is really fascinating when I see where we're going. And I think about yesterday's keynote about where we're going to be in 50 years' time. That's been quite impressive. And I think as forensic practitioners and professionals, we've got to anticipate what those changes will be.
Right.
So we stay ahead of the curve rather than being reactionary to the developments in technology.
Yeah. So I'm going to pause right there and give another plug for our SANS keynote coming up in just a couple of hours. I'm looking beyond our cameras at Heather Mahalik, still in the audience, getting ready for the 5 most dangerous new attack techniques. That's happening today at 3:55 p.m. in Moscone West, level 1. And that's going to be an amazing panel moderated by Ed Scotus. You're going to have talks from Dr. Johannes Ulrich, Heather Mahalik, Katie Nichols, Steve Sims. You don't want to miss that panel coming up later today at 3:55 p.m. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about your course. You teach Forensics 508, Advanced Incident Response, Threat Hunting, and Digital Forensics. Tell us a little bit more about the course and who that is ideally suited for.
So the 508 course is, one of SANS's top courses, and it really deals with addressing intrusion and other types of security incidents within an organization. But besides talking about the investigative techniques of how to actually investigate those kind of incidents, what it also really looks at is how we can do proactive investigations in enterprise environments. I always like to think of this as a detective. Something bad had to happen before I came in and did my investigation. But if we take a proactive investigative approach, like we do, we teach on the 508 course, we can actually start to identify bad actors in our environments before the damage that they cause actually becomes material. So that really mirrors what we see with a lot of modern investigative techniques around the world. And I think that's absolutely critical these days, is we don't wait for something bad to happen before we investigate.
Yeah.
We constantly investigate, and we're constantly looking for bad things in our environments. And so long as we're doing that, we can actually catch the bad guys before they actually materially impact on the networks in a negative way.
Wow. How long have you been teaching for SANS?
Oh, wow. I think it's about 10 years now. So I taught for a while. I was in instructor development for a while before getting certified.
So I heard something mentioned. How did you actually get introduced to SANS?
So I was attending the SANS course in South Africa, the 408 course, which was then the earlier Windows Forensics course. And my instructor was Jess Garcia, who's also presenting at RSA this week. And another SANS instructor, Ted Demopoulos, was there teaching another course. And I ended up helping out Jess in his class. He had a lot of students, so it was in my nature to really just jump up and assist. And he said to me the one day, look, we're doing a SANS at night thing on Wednesday night. So would you like to come and do a presentation? So I'm like, okay, cool. And
you give a talk.
He gave us sort of impromptu talk at a SANS night event, and both Ted and Jess came up to me and said, "Look, you're actually a pretty good instructor. We think you'd be suitable for SANS," and that's how they got me to the journey.
Wow.
Something I never in my wildest dreams would have thought would have been possible.
Right.
But because they identified me, I suppose we put it this way, identified my passion, and effectively started me on this road to my amazing SANS journey.
So, you touched on something, we were standing up before we came on. You shared with me, you're actually more introverted than an extrovert.
Yeah, that's very true.
So what would you say to, the professional watching a stream who, has a passion for cybersecurity, for helping other people, but probably would say, hey, I'm not Jason. I could never see myself speaking publicly, teaching in that capacity. What would be your advice to them?
Well, the advice from my side is just talk. I mean, I know this sounds really, really crazy, but I'm naturally an introverted person.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite shy. Although nobody ever believes me when I say that these days. But that's my normal nature. But
Right.
I've learned to talk to people. And here's the thing: even if you are introverted and you are shy, if you're passionate about something,
Yeah.
you can have natural conversations with people about your passion.
Right.
Because it's your passion that drives you during those discussions. So for me, anybody that wants to start talking, anybody wants to put themselves out there, don't be afraid. Put yourselves out there. Go and talk. Talk at a small event. Go to Toastmasters. You were mentioning that with Heather.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just talk to people and don't be afraid. And here's the thing: you'll hear this a lot with people in our industry. You'll hear people talk about this concept of imposter syndrome, like feeling that I'm not good enough.
Uh-huh.
I mean, here's the thing. I've been doing forensics for over 30 years. And
you
every
still have
case
it.
I work on, I still have imposter syndrome.
Yeah. But now you know how to have that self-talk back with the
Exactly.
imposter syndrome.
So here's the thing. There's a certain level of wisdom that comes when you realize that you don't know everything. And there's
Right.
a certain level of humility that comes into knowing that you don't know.
Yeah.
But the difference is when you know you don't know, you know what to go and still learn. So the lesson that I'd like to say to people out there that think they don't know enough, embrace the fact that you don't know enough. Embrace the fact that there's still more for you to learn. Because it's that knowledge that you have more to learn will keep you humble, but also hungry for knowledge. And that's how you continue to grow.
So what is it that you're hungry to learn right now? What's driving you as you look forward over this next year?
So what I'm actually quite interested in terms of driving myself personally is really looking at the whole impact of artificial intelligence and how that's going to impact on investigations. Rob was talking in the previous segment about the impact of AI. We are seeing AI having a huge impact, and as a forensic practitioner, my drive is to learn more about the actual maths behind it, the actual algorithms, the science behind artificial intelligence and where that's potentially going. Because for me as a forensic practitioner, I'm ultimately going to have to stand up in court one day and explain these things to a jury or to a judge.
Right.
So that's my current challenge at the moment, and where I'm driving myself is moving myself outside of that comfort zone into a very deep machine learning, very heavy mathematics orientated approach. But it's exciting.
Is there anyone that you're following right now that you're able to pick up some of that knowledge from? I mean, everyone right now is trying to learn.
So one of the people that I've been following a lot is my fellow friend of mine and SANS Instructor, Jess Garcia. He's been doing some amazing research around the use of machine learning in digital forensics. But besides him, I follow a lot of mathematicians and some computer scientists around the world that are doing research in this area. So there's a lot. It's a growing, burgeoning community, and it's really exciting to see where we're going to go.
It is. I mean, listening to Rob, listening to you, you have my thought. My mind is going in 10 directions on what the possibilities are with AI and the exposure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was joking with Heather earlier. It's like I can't wait to do my first investigation where AI actually sort of a self-aware AI, if I can put it that way, actually commits a crime that normally we would attribute to a human being and have to investigate that.
You're excited about this?
I'm excited. I'm excited about having to dig into the algorithms and the mechanism of how this actually happened and being able to prove that in court. It's hugely exciting. I know it's kind of weird because I've got to wait for something bad to happen. But that's the exciting part about it, is that there's a whole new frontier of science, a whole new frontier of computing that we can look at, and that for me is just absolutely amazing. The prospects of what am I going to be investigating in a year's time, or 10 years time, or 20 years time. It's so exciting.
Absolutely. Well, listen, this has been a great conversation. Is there anything else you'd want to share with our community?
Well, for those of you that are at RSA, I'd love you guys to come and attend my talk tomorrow on applying forensic engineering to incident response. One of the things we're looking at in terms of security is just improving overall accountability and improving, making sure that organizations are more accountable for the security, and forensic engineering definitely provides that option. And yeah, otherwise,
Tell us the time of your talk.
I think it's at 10, just after 10. I can't remember the exact time off the top of my head. I know I've got to be there at 10, so I think it's 30 minutes before that. But in terms of the community itself, and I hear them mentioned a bit earlier, SANS puts out a lot of resources out there for the community. We have a lot of material that we share. And for those of you that are interested in getting into digital forensics specifically, SANS has an amazing resource, our new to defer brochure that we put out. I've been involved in writing part of that material. It gives some really, really good insights into how to get into forensics specifically, and also to the community. Feel free to reach out to us at SANS Instructors. We're very passionate about the community. We're very
approachable.
passionate. Reach out to us if you've got questions. Ask us. We're happy to help. And that's what I want to do. So when I challenge people out there that want to get into this field, reach out to us. We're happy to help.
Where will you be next?
Next, hopefully I'll be home for a few days. I'll be going home for a few days just to catch up with my investigating team and sort of look at some of the cases we're working on. And then I will be in Saudi Arabia at the end of May, and then Amsterdam. That's what I'll be teaching my next event.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking some time to hang with us here in the booth. Definitely be sure to follow Jason on social. Check out his course offerings and where he's teaching over on the SANS website. Jason, thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Stack. Much appreciated.
So, listen, we have one more talk coming up between Josh Lemon and Megan Roddie here in just a few minutes at 12:30. So, we're about 12 minutes away. I'm going to have one more giveaway after they finish talking. And so, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put up this slide right here. Go ahead and enter for another gift card giveaway to our sansgear.com store. You can enter simply by typing the hashtag SANS livestream in the chat right now. Don't go very far. Grab a cup of coffee, grab something to drink or a bite to eat, and join us back here in about 10 minutes.
and welcome back. Today, or this afternoon rather, you've got myself and also Megan. We might start off with a couple of introductions of who we actually are, so you know who you're listening to this afternoon. So Megan, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with SANS and what you do full-time outside of SANS as well?
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm working as a senior security engineer at IBM, working a lot on detection engineering type content. But with SANS, I do a lot around cloud, digital forensics, and incident response, kind of similar to the topics we'll be talking about today. I co-authored 4509 with Josh and a couple of our colleagues, and I recently started teaching that course. So basically anything and everything cloud forensics, blog posts, webcasts, that's a lot of what I do for SANS.
Nice. And for myself, I work as the director for the Managed Detection and Response team at Optics, who essentially basically looking at cloud and also endpoint. And then similar to Megan, I also co-author the 509 class, our cloud forensics class. So between the both of us, we're often talking a lot about cloud together, along with Dave and Pierre, who are also our other co-authors who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but hopefully they're back in Texas, I think, sort of working hard and looking at new content and new research as well. So I guess to start off with, let's start with a bit of a poll. Like one thing I guess we want to know is a little bit about what types of clouds people actually use.
Yeah, there's so many. In our course 4509, we focus on the SaaS, major SaaS providers, Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, and then we dive into the three major cloud providers, Google, Amazon, Azure, and we don't touch on the others, but there is Oracle, Alibaba, so many options. So we're gonna just poll the audience and kind of see what people are using.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to us to find out what people actually use. The other thing I kind of find interesting is, particularly when we're teaching the class, that what people use changes in what region you're actually in.
Yeah.
Like what we see, I'm from over in Australia, so I'm often teaching the Asia Pac region, is very, very different to what I see when we're teaching out here in the US as well.
Yeah, and also multi-cloud is becoming more of a concept. You use Azure for your AD provider, and then you use AWS for hosting some servers. And so then that complexity starts too, is people need to know. And that's why I think regardless of if you are an AWS or an Amazon customer, Azure customer, it is valuable to learn about all the major clouds, because even if you change companies, it's a coin toss what they'll be using.
That's right. And I mean, you're exactly right. Like talking to a lot of our students in class, it is multi-cloud in terms of what they're actually using nowadays.
Yeah, and it looks like in terms of our audience responses, AWS up top, that's kind of what I'd expect.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite surprised Google Cloud outdid Azure, I think, in terms of what we see from our students, or at least you're an APAC region. In the US, I typically see a mix of AWS, Azure being the common ones. Google Cloud is definitely the one that's probably least used of the three.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still see a lot of Google Cloud, particularly with people who are in the education space. Like that's huge, whether it's universities or schools, are heavily using Google Cloud or Google Workspace predominantly.
And I think that's their marketing. They realized that they could go over them with their Chromebooks. They were kind of already in that education market. So industry, region, all of those things play a huge impact. And so that's why it's important to kind of have an understanding overall of all of them so that you can adapt. Prices change. People decide to switch from AWS to Azure to save money. People left Azure for AWS because Azure ran out of resources in the recent history.
Or some new kind of crazy service that's available in some other cloud that people want to utilize, so they start to kind of pipe their information through that cloud and then back to their own. It's kind of wild in terms of what we see. Which I guess kind of like circles us around a little bit to, I guess, what we wanted to talk about today, which is a little bit about threat hunting in the cloud, and then also a bit of detection engineering in the cloud as well. Like being able to do things like threat hunting in the cloud. I don't think threat hunting is a new concept. That's been discussed for a long, long time.
Yeah.
But when it comes to things like how do we translate the threat hunting we used to do on-prem to our services or resources or the crazy new widget thing that we're using inside of AWS or Google Cloud, like how do people actually do threat hunting in that space?
Absolutely. And I think it's kind of that same aspect of, I think, in terms of proactive versus reactive. We do see a lot of people as new technologies emerge, it is the case. We see people more on the reactive side. They didn't know what they had to prepare for. And so talking about threat hunting, detection, it hasn't been as much touched on in the cloud because we've been so focused on here are all the attacks that are happening, how can we respond to them and stuff.
That's right. And I mean, like, even if we go back to, I guess, the fundamentals of threat hunting to start with, like, the concept of threat hunting is where you go hunting in places where you don't have detection. So I guess sort of an interesting place for people to start is to go, all right, well, we have coverage in this space, so let's go threat hunting in these areas that we don't necessarily have sort of detections in. But I guess what we're going to talk about in a little bit, like, detection inside the cloud is often pretty minimal in terms of what people are actually looking at.
Yeah, so we have a broad threat hunting landscape in the cloud. There's a lot you can unbury. There's a lot of different type of attacks. I think actually one thing to talk about before we kind of go to the broader cloud topic is ever since the cloud started, we've seen a rise in popularity of containers because the clouds make it easier and more useful, more use cases for spinning up these containers. So I think, why don't we touch on that really quick? I know you're very focused on containers right now, research into container security. Day 5 of the course, we talk about that, and you've done a lot of research for it. So, like, how do you think specific to containers, what are some of the key things to think about with threat hunting? What kinds of things can we threat hunt for? What are the, like, important evidence sources?
I think the big challenge with threat hunting, particularly when it comes to containers, is a lot of times when you want to threat hunt, you want to look backwards in time, or you want to sort of say, all right, we've got this theory around what a threat actor might have done. Let's actually go looking for evidence of that theory that we've produced as part of it. I think the big challenge with containers is looking for that historical evidence is usually that first roadblock that anyone really hits.
Because containers, the big thing in general, especially even in investigations, incident response, containers are meant to destroy themselves. They're there and then they're not. And so if you come across an incident that affected a container that has already been destroyed, you're just out of luck. So that's like where threat hunting becomes much more of an important concept with containers, because you have to be proactive in searching for that evidence, because you might not be able to be reactive.
That's right. And even simple things, like if you take a really kind of basic threat hunt, which doesn't often occur too much in reality in on-prem, is where you might go, all right, well, we know this IP address is malicious. Like if you just start with something super simple, like this IP address is malicious, I want to know if a container communicated with that. It's kind of going, all right, well, what evidence do we have sitting around that will actually show us that? Like, can we look inside of a container that existed for the last 90 days? Probably not, based if you're just kind of using simple logging that's available. And then also going, all right, well, what other kind of creative log sources potentially exist as part of that? Like, do I have flow logs that potentially show me those types of things?
Exactly, and that's where it comes into importance. We'll actually talk about tomorrow. Me and Josh are presenting at RSA. That's the main reason we're here. 1 p.m. tomorrow, local time. We're actually talking about how we collect that evidence, how we preserve it, how we make sure that if an incident comes or if we want to threat hunt, we have that evidence readily available to us. There's some stuff enabled by default, but there's a lot that's not.
That's right. And also depends on when you set up your tenant as to whether it is enabled by default or not too, which is just wild, like when you think about it.
Yeah, in the course we have to be like, well, if you set up your tenant before October 1st, 2018, then you're missing all these logs. But if you didn't after, you're good. It's default now. So things like that change. You have to be on top of it. You have to know what your gaps are, fill those gaps, and consistently monitor, because new sources pop up, the configuration settings change, which is unfortunate, but it's the nature of it.
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's try and jump to another survey. I think just to kind of get them back in order, we had the threat hunting survey to find out what people are doing with threat hunting. So do you conduct threat hunting in the cloud? It looks like we've got about 40 people, 40% rather, not 40 people, who are saying they are doing it. And then it's a bit of a split between people that are trying to do it, or they're planning to do it, or they've not kind of considered it yet too.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty impressed. I definitely thought it would lean to more towards we're not. Obviously 60% on the not side, but not too far off, 40% of people doing it. So that's really great. It'd be curious, like, is it things, are people doing it because they had a threat hunting process in place? I think that is where you're going to see most of those things. We were threat hunting on-prem. We added cloud sources. We have these processes. It's definitely Probably more on the other side, people aren't doing threat hunting at all. It's more of a niche process. Yeah. So if you have a team of 3 analysts monitoring your entire SOC, they probably are spending all their time responding to the alerts coming in from EDR. They're not sitting there like, oh, let's go see what we can find today. So I think that really affects it. Your technological capabilities, but also your staffing capabilities, their skill set, things like that, which is probably where we see this difference of, are you doing it in the cloud? Probably a good chunk of that depends on, are you doing it at all?
That's right. I guess maybe that's a good starting point. Like, if people aren't doing threat hunting in the cloud, like, you can pretty much go, all right, the threat hunting we are doing on-prem, like, how can we translate that to the cloud? And that kind of will lead people, I guess, to start with and go, all right, do we have evidence sources to do that type of threat hunting?
Exactly.
Like, do we have the ability to look at who spun up new virtual machines in the cloud? If we've already got that ability on-prem inside of the virtual environments on-prem, how do we get that information from the cloud as well?
Yeah, and it goes back to this concept in general that a lot of what we do on-prem is what we need to do in the cloud. It's not a whole new skill set, all new technologies and processes and procedures. We can think about it of what are we doing on-prem and what are we losing out on in our cloud environment because we were focused on-prem. And then there's mappings you can do. There's things you can do that are analogous and relevant.
Yeah, and I guess people need to remember that threat actors don't really care whether they're attacking an on-prem environment or it's a cloud environment. Like, at the end of the day, for them, they're just going after whatever they can get into, basically. And we, as the defenders, we're the ones who actually have to, like, be able to deal with on-prem, in the cloud, or whether it's containers, which are very ephemeral in the cloud, like disappear after a short period of time.
Yeah, when I was doing a webcast a couple weeks ago about kind of cloud detection, the question came up, is it APTs attacking the cloud now? Like, they're moving forward and advancing. Is it the script kiddies? I'm like, it's all of it. It's
right.
Exactly the same people are attacking on-prem. They're now like, oh, and they have a cloud server that's unsecure. I might as well hit that. So it's not, the threat landscape isn't changing in the sense of the motives and of the attackers. Their motives are the same. They want to make money. They want to steal intel, proprietary files. They're still doing that. So like you said, they don't care if you store your files on OneDrive or if you store them on a local host.
That's exactly right. But also, I think from the perspective of our side, like I did a case a little while ago where it was, again, like an Exchange server sitting in AWS on an EC2 instance, right? So just a virtual machine up in AWS. The threat actors ended up hitting that with, I think it was like proxy shell, essentially, that they were using. But the threat actor, at the end of the day, they don't go, oh, this is an AWS environment, let's hit that. They just go after the service or whatever it is that they can get into. But I guess from our side, as defenders and investigators, like, people need to realize that there are new techniques and faster ways to do analysis in the cloud. So in that particular case, like, we could do things like snapshot and then start to look at those at that sort of drive really, really fast. Whereas if you were on-prem, you'd have to potentially like snapshot that and slowly try to get that out of the environment.
Yeah, exactly. The threat actors, like, they kind of have to learn the new technology, but mostly they don't care. But as defenders, we can't always take the exact same procedures. Or if we do, it's potentially ineffective. Like, we might as well leverage the resources and things that the clouds are giving us, the services.
Yeah, and to make our lives faster and smoother as well.
Yeah.
Like, I guess there are some threat actors that we do see specifically abuse the cloud when it comes to things like crypto mining, which is a hot topic. I think Google's Horizons report, which they are starting to release more regularly now. Like, one of the hot topics out of there is always crypto mining.
Exactly. That's been there since the beginning, because we saw when cloud first started, people were moving to the cloud without understanding how to defend the cloud. So we just had all these open EC2 instances, API keys being leaked on GitHub, because the technology almost moved faster. We don't focus on security with evolving technology. We're like, hey, there's this cool new thing we can do. But it's like, okay, well, but how's that going to compromise our environment? So it was, oh, look, there's these open hosts. We can just deploy crypto miners. It became the good thing. So I think the other one in Horizon reports that's been up and coming, I've heard one of our instructors, Leonard, Corsten, he just posted a blog post talking about ransomware in the cloud.
Yeah.
Ransomware being data extortion.
Yeah.
And right after he posted that, Google's Horizon report came out. I said the same thing. We're not seeing ransomware in the cloud, but we're seeing people take these buckets of information. All of your data is stored in, let's say, S3 buckets.
Yeah.
Delete all that data, steal it, delete it, and say, yeah, you can have it back if you pay us.
Yeah.
So we're also seeing things like that, where it's like traditional ransomware moving to the cloud, but in a new form almost.
And much faster too. Like I know in cases that I've worked where there'll be that extortion type activity. The threat actor is basically sucking out as much detail as they can out of the environment. And that might occur overnight. And then the next day people come back to work and are like, man, the internet's super slow. What's going on here? And they're like, oh man, we've got like this huge outflow of traffic. But when it's in the cloud or in OneDrive or SharePoint or in Google Drive, like that is fast. And also it doesn't impact, like you don't kind of wake up the next morning and go, oh man, Google Drive's really slow. That just doesn't happen. So you find out when the threat actor comes back and goes, oh, by the way, we've taken X number of hundreds of gigabytes of data from your environment. Now pay us some Bitcoin as part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. So I guess, like we've talked a little bit about, I guess, all these different services. Let's take a little bit of a look at what people understand from a logging perspective, I guess. So we might throw up our next survey there, which is around understanding how confident you are that you've got evidence or log sources available in the cloud. So about half are saying that they're not sure at all.
Okay. Well, those 50% of people, 1 p.m. tomorrow, if you're at RSA, we will tell you if you're collecting your evidence and log sources. And it is a real challenge. And it's the number of types of logs, it's the difference between enabled, disabled, and then you get complex. Yeah, our reaction is on. But it's not feasible from a business perspective to bring in every single log. It's the same reason on premise, most companies don't do full PCAP and like storage because you can't store every bit of network data. And so that's another complex perspective is, hey, we want to threat hunt. We need logs. What logs are going to provide the most value? Yeah,
that's right. And also understanding, like what we're going to talk about tomorrow is we're going to go through AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, M365, and Google Workspace. And I think about the space of about 45 minutes. So it'll be a little bit of rapid fire of trying to impart information with people. That will also be recorded as well. So I think people can watch that back afterwards. But you're exactly right. Like understanding not only what logs to turn on, but what logs are useful to you as well. Like if you've got, as I kind of mentioned before, if you've got multi-cloud environments where you have Azure Active Directory for authentication, then you're using AWS as well for some of your hosted services, understanding what logs exist where and what logs are important as well. Like if you've got Azure Active Directory, you'll need those auth logs to tell you what potentially is going on with systems over on the AWS side of things as well.
Yeah, and then like we expand into especially those multi-cloud things. How do we effectively search the logs? Do we use the in-cloud tools? Well, I could use like CloudTrail and use search cloud logs there in AWS, but now we got a multi-tenant environment. We're using AD with Azure, so I'm gonna log into Azure and go to the AD logs. There's all the resource logs, all the separate applications. So then we got to start thinking about, okay, is there a place we can centralize it, a way that we can more easily search through logs, getting to normalization. That's another thing. That was a big deal of like SIMs. As SIM technology grows, the fact you can normalize and you can search source IP instead of source underscore IP, source CIP, SRC.IP, host IP. And so we have the same thing in the cloud. Azure might call it a resource, AWS might call it something different. And so it just varies all the time. And so that's like another challenge to approach with threat hunting. Do you know what fields you can search on? And the types of fields. We're used to Windows and Linux. Oh, you can process, parent process, those kinds of things, files, directories. But do you know about operation types? Do you know about resource types? You know that crypto mining uses GPU-enabled hosts typically, so you have to send it. Do you even know what a GPU-enabled host is? And so there's a lot of intricacies of how is this data represented in each platform.
Yeah. And then also, like, leading on from that, I guess it comes to things like, how do you then naturally do detections across those logs? Like,
Exactly.
like once you've got those logs collected somewhere, how can you write detections or do detection engineering across those as well?
And I think I want to say it's kind of harder than threat hunting. From the perspective of threat hunting, it's annoying, but I can log into this tool and that tool and that tool and run my searches individually. And again, it's kind of like a proactive search. Detection engineering, I have to know where to detect what things. I have to be extra proactive. It's not going to be detected if the detection's not in place. So how can I detect it? Where can I detect it? What are the possible bypasses? How are the threat actors going to get around this detection?
Yeah, and then also, how do I go tuning those detections as well? Like, it's interesting to understand that from a cloud perspective, a lot of detections often kind of run in a certain order as well, as opposed to someone kind of creating an API key for regular things, but someone creates an API key and then all of a sudden it gets used from another location, then it spins up a bunch of like virtual machines. You're like, all right, we've got a potential issue here, as opposed to someone just creating an API key.
Exactly. So, and that goes back to you can't, we were talking about this earlier, you can't threat hunt, you can't take a security perspective to cloud, do cloud security unless you understand the attacker perspective.
That's right.
And that is something that differs. We talk about, there's concepts that you can take from on-prem to the cloud, but there are attacks that are different. There's ways where it appears in the logs are different, the attack chains. So unless you're understanding the chain and how the attackers are doing it and how that's represented in the logs, what visibility you have, detection becomes a major challenge because if you don't know what to detect on, how are you going to do detection?
That's right. And then also like patching the logs, not just from the cloud, but also from the host together. Like if you see someone start to spin up a bunch of EC2 instances, like you want to know what's going on inside those. Like are they dropping coin miners, which is pretty common nowadays, but are they dropping other things like DDoS tools or other C2 tools that are going to be used for later stages of an attack as well? Like that's this other challenge, which I think a lot of people just haven't fully grasped, and particularly when it comes to detection engineering, going, right, let's patch the cloud logs and the host logs together and try to actually tell a story around what's going on.
Yeah, and it also ties back, and I think we talk about this a bit tomorrow, we talk about in the course, is this concept of data plane and control plane.
Yeah.
And we get our data plane, control plane, we get our control plane by default, but the data plane is disabled by default, and that tells you more of the micro actions taken.
Exactly.
So instead of just an EC2 instance was spun up, like what's happening with those instances or what are happening with the different resources. If you don't have that, it's so much harder. How do you differentiate a sysadmin spinning up a VM if all you know is that a VM was spun up?
That's right. But I guess like it's not all bad stories, I guess. We should also say there are good sides to this too. Like the side of doing network detection and logging is hugely beneficial when it comes to the cloud. Like being able to do things like turn on flow logs is simple. Like that's a flick of a couple of switches. Like it's amazing.
It's not, let me go beg my network engineering team to do a 1 month long project in which they assess taps and other network devices and rebuild the architecture and the downtime we need to set it all up. It allows security to so much quickly respond and seamlessly.
That's right. Like it's not a matter of kind of going, all right, we need to do a network outage. Please give us a network outage to install a tap to actually go and do flow logs. And even when we talk about things like full packet capture, which from an investigator, like I would love full packet capture for a lot of things, but trying to turn that on in on-prem, like that is not simple, let alone the outage to capture it to start with, but then the location to actually capture it and the size and data that you've got to hold as part of it.
The destination, the tools, getting those files to the people who need them.
Yeah, it's wild.
So yeah, there's a LinkedIn user in the chat saying like the complexity level seems exponential versus on-prem, and it does, but like we said, there's also benefits. There are ways we get more advantages with the logging too. On-prem, you've got to set up a logging server that's going to store all those logs. Are we giving it the right throughput? Are we giving the network the right throughput? Are we giving the server enough storage? Our resources in the cloud are dynamically scaling. Like you're getting paid for it,
Yeah, that's right.
but if your drive runs out of space, it's not like, oh no, what do we delete? How do we requisition the hard drive, etc. It's the drive's full automatically. Here's a new drive to fill to. So there's yes, the complexity level, there's a lot to learn. I think partially that complexity level comes from the newness of the cloud.
Correct. Yeah.
People don't understand it yet. We've had a very long time having Windows hosts in our network environments. We understand a Windows host to an extent. From
and we're
that
very
perspective.
familiar with it as well. All right, let's take a look at our last survey before we wrap it up here and see what people said. This was around detection side of things. So, are you leveraging detection capabilities in the cloud? Looks like we haven't had a lot of responses to this one. I think it's only recently gone up. So, but we can see a couple of people are using built-in tools, which is a brilliant way to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of the clouds are heavily investing in detection tools.
And that actually ties into the whole, yes, there's extra challenges, but yes, there's extra solutions. These vendors are competing for business. And either cheap or free, they'll give you ways to detect, ways to search the logs, things like that, to try and earn your business. Like, we give you all the visibility. So it goes back to, that's another benefit, is you can use these cloud provided vendors. The complexity comes with multi-cloud tenancy again. How do you make sure that in Azure you're detecting things the same way that you are for AWS?
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, I think we'll start to wrap it up here. So thank you very much for joining, Megan.
Yep, thank you so much. If you're at RSA, 1 p.m. tomorrow, we'll be speaking about very similar topics. If you're not at RSA, come meet us at one of our classes.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much from Megan and myself, Josh Lemon. We hope to see you around at RSA or hopefully tomorrow at our talk at 1 p.m. Thanks very much.